Hi guys, welcome back to the Poets Era.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world. Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for.
The rank of every poet is well known. They can amaze us like a thunderstorm.
I am a poet.
So, poets need to suffer.
I believe we have some power over who we love. It isn't something that just happens to a person.
I think the poets might disagree.
Well, I'm not a poet. I'm just a woman.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Ali, and today I am teaching you everything you need to know about the Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift. So much has happened since I posted my previous video on this new album and era, which is crazy because that was like 2 days ago. But for this, I really wanted to take a little bit of extra time, firstly, to see what Taylor did and said in Tokyo, but also just to kind of gather all of my thoughts and give a bit of a more prepared presentation for you guys. Last week's video was very chaotic for me. This will be a lot more in-depth. I also made a really cute necklace, but the string that I used just would not tie, so I just thought I'd show you. This would have been really cute. It said the Tortured Poets Department, but don't buy rubbery elastic. So today we will be discussing at length Taylor Swift's brand new album, The Tortured Poets Department. I think I'm finally getting the hang of that name. For the previous video, I literally had to write it on a post-it note and stick it in front of me because it took all of my power to not say Dead Poet Society. Speaking of which, who did their homework? Last week I recommended you guys to watch that movie. It is one of my all-time favorite films, and though I don't think it'll have much to do with the album, I think it will get you in the mood. And if I were to ask you what year that film came out, yes, it was 1989, exactly. This week's homework I'm assigning is for you to watch Little Women, preferably the 2019 Greta Gerwig adaptation, but honestly any is fine. The Winona Ryder one is great too. I think getting into Jo March's head or Louisa May Alcott's head will be a really fun exercise. Actually, you know what? No, I'm getting more detective energy from the album, so watch Gone Girl instead. I think we're unlocking a new good for her era. I just still cannot believe this is happening. Like, I'm about to have 17 brand new Taylor Swift bridges. That doesn't feel real. So we found out last night on the first 2024 leg of the Eras tour that Tokyo was in fact Taylor's backup. If she hadn't won any Grammys, which I really do think she wasn't quite expecting to, that's when she would have announced it, which is so funny to think about because I know the majority of my viewers, you guys are from the Northern Hemisphere, and so I think you would have been asleep when she announced it. That would have been interesting. So not even a full day after I posted my first video about this album, Taylor gave us the full track list, and this is great but also really sad because if you know Taylor and how she does album rollouts, to release it so soon and so simply with not even a caption, it kind of broke my heart a little bit because that is just out of character. With the re-recordings, we've seen all of the little games and puzzles and quizzes and clues that we've had to solve in order to figure out the track list, which I live for. You know, as someone that does the New York Times games every single day, I love me a puzzle or riddle or quiz. I mean, look at how much fun we know Taylor had with Midnight's Mayhem with me and announcing the Midnight's track list day by day. I loved that, she loved that. So not only were we robbed of a vault scramble for Speak Now because that was leaked, we now had the same thing happen with this. And I actually didn't know until after the track list was out that it had leaked, and it had leaked back in January, which is astounding to me, and also props to like everyone that I follow on social media because I didn't even hear a whisper of that. I think the fact that I don't really go on TikTok anymore helped probably because I think that's where it leaked. But I've got to say, even if I had seen it, I don't think I would have believed it. Like, firstly the album name, but then like some of the track titles and the features. Post Malone and Florence and the Machine. I would have thought this is just the laziest hack job. This person's not even a Swiftie. I'm so glad that I got to be surprised. The fact that it didn't even get like an accompanying caption or explanation, it was just the date. It's not good. I just need to say, does she think that I can read that? Like, I thought the Lover back cover was hard to read, and like Fearless Taylor's version, Speak Now, they were challenging. This, Taylor, my eyesight is disintegrating with every new album you release. I just need you to keep that in mind because I love to read, but at this point in time, I'm struggling. But yeah, I'm sad to think that she probably had something really cool and fun planned for Poets and this new album to, you know, announce the track list and really have a lot of fun surprising everyone with that. So thanks a lot to whoever ruined that for us.
Thanks a lot, you idiot. Thanks a lot, Rachel. It's not charging my iPad and it's all your
boat.
So before I dive into these songs, I just want to thank this week's video sponsor, which is Surfshark. As you all probably know by now, Surfshark is a VPN, aka a virtual private network, and that is essentially what keeps us safe online. But also, and maybe more importantly, at least for my audience, opens up an entire world of possibilities for streaming and access to pop culture. So I obviously use Surfshark all the time. I travel a lot, which means I have to use public Wi-Fi a lot. So this is absolutely essential if I don't want like all of my data and files and maybe identity stolen, who knows. This not only conceals your IP address for privacy and safety reasons, but also kind of gives you a new one. If your Netflix doesn't have something that you want to watch, you simply just hop on, switch to a different country, and now you have a million more options. So if you ever want to say so long London, like Taylor, you can journey over to Australia instead and explore what we have to offer. Also, Australia is quite lucky when it comes to music releases. If an artist is doing local time release, meaning it drops at midnight wherever you are in the world, we get albums first. So if you would like to get in on that and not wait to have to hear music, Surfshark is for you. I'll have all the information down below, and you can use my code Sheehan for an extra 3 months free at surfshark.deals/Sheehan. Thank you again so much, Surfshark, for sponsoring this week's video. I love you, my audience loves you, and let's get into it. Now, we've also been given an album logo or emblem. I don't really know what to call it, but this is a first for us. I definitely associate the Taylor Swift name logo with kind of the first album. I wish she'd always kept that around. It's so nostalgic to me, but this new logo is so groovy and cool, and like I think if this is kind of the vibe that we have to go off for the album, then I'm just so excited for the overall aesthetic of it. Not only do we obviously have the album's name acronym in there, TT wait, what? TTPD. Yep. Again, I was putting Dead Poets in there and that's not where they are. Not only does it have that, we also have TS in there, very creative, and 11 for her 11th studio album, and also a teardrop. I could be reaching with like all of those, but I'm intrigued to find out more about that logo and who made it. We also know that this album and era's theme is white, which is so exciting. I can't remember if I mentioned this in my previous video, but that is kind of why Taylor was wearing her gloves, because she had her nails painted white, and that was kind of a cover up and then a grand reveal. So white feels interesting for a lot of reasons. To me, white mostly represents a clean, blank slate, a fresh start. White also represents to surrender. So that's a really interesting like lens to think about this through, but also, and I don't think this is where it's going at all, but I felt like I needed to mention it, is that white is often associated with weddings and marriage. But yeah, to me, I think it represents a fresh start. Speaking of blank slates and fresh starts, last night Taylor opened the 2024 Eras Tour acoustic surprise song section with Dear Reader. Did I not mention that exact specific song in last week's video? This is obviously the final track on Midnights, signifying, you know, closing of the Midnights chapter, the beginning of a new one, but also indicating that she, the chairman of the Tortured Poets department, is once again addressing us, the consumers of her poetry. The second surprise song it's still too raw, I can't talk about it. But speaking of the album Red, I feel like thematically, Poets, as I will be referring to this album, could be her grown-up Red. Red was inspired by her deepest heartbreak at that time and the entire journey of that, you know, from beginning to end. And what I love most about Red is that it wasn't just a breakup album. Yes, it had breakup songs. We had All Too Well, we had The Moment I Knew, Better Man, Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, but we also had songs like Holy Ground or Begin Again or State of Grace and I mean 22. So my hope for Poets is that even if this is kind of chronicling this breakdown or breakup of a very, very long-term relationship and likely someone that she saw herself living the rest of her life with, I'm hoping we get a bit of variety on there too. And as I get into the specific tracks, I will speak more about where I think we may find that. Now, along with the track list reveal, we also got to see this back cover, and on that is our first ever sort of back cover statement. It says, "I love you, it's ruining my life." So we have gone from "You've ruined my life by not being mine" to "I love you, ain't the worst thing you ever heard," and now this. Oh my gosh, this album, I think it's gonna ruin us. In terms of collaborators on this album, I would not be surprised if it is a Jack and Aaron masterpiece again. I'm kind of hoping for a little bit more Aaron, being a 3am tracks girly. I do feel quite hopeful about it. Feels very intentional to me, the fact that Jack told us when You're Losing Me was written, which was essentially 2 years ago, and then Taylor, you know, about a month later lets us know that she started writing this album album 2 years ago. I think we're gonna have a lot of crossover there. And in the same way, when they finished Folklore, they just kind of couldn't stop writing, and Evermore was born 6 months later. I'm wondering if Poets is kind of the, not fallout, but continuation of Midnights in a way, especially if we compare the theme from Midnights to this kind of aesthetic and vibe that we have so far for Poets. If Midnights is being kept awake at night, tormented by your ex-loves and experiences and traumas, I wonder if the natural progression from that is kind of that next day anxiety, you know, when you're laying in bed until the afternoon, just ruminating or being unable to get up. Another collaborator that I think we can safely bet will be on the album is Lewis Bell. He shared Postie's announcement post for the album, so I feel like that's a kind of like, hey guys, I did it too. Now, why is this important? So Lewis, or Louis, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, he worked on Afterglow by Taylor. He also worked on Circles by Posty, and most importantly to me, Angels Like You by Miley Cyrus. So I feel like we are in very good hands. Okay, so we have 4 different sides on this album, which is such an interesting way to like divide it all up. I just love having a concept. I love when people go hard on something. Kind of reminds me of like the dedication that the Barbie team did with their marketing this past year. When Taylor does something, she goes whole, what do they call it? Whole hog. Taylor goes all the way in, and that makes me so happy. You know, the theme, the vibe, the aesthetic, the merch, hopefully. We better be getting like cool mugs and like stationery. I don't know. I just think this could go to so many different cool and creative spaces. All right, let's get into my theories and predictions on what these songs will be about. And as always, I desperately want to hear your thoughts and feelings and ideas in the comments below, not only so I can respond to them, but so we can come back in just over 2 months' time and see how embarrassingly wrong we were. So our first track on side A is Fortnight featuring Post Malone. I still can't believe this. If fans were to write like a dream wish list of features, Posty would be on there for a lot of people, but if we were guessing who we think would be on there, I would be surprised if anyone saw this coming. She should do a collaboration with Post Malone. It would be unexpected, I'll give you that. What would it sound like? So obviously, Taylor has written a song about the video game Fortnite. Obviously, I'm kidding, but I do need to check in that like, we know that, right? There has been so many things on Twitter that concerned me, and I thought they were joking, but then I've been seeing things where I don't know if people actually knew of the word Fortnite and like its correct spelling outside of the video game. Maybe Americans don't use this word. For anyone that doesn't know, a fortnight is a period of 2 weeks or 14 days typically. That's it. It just means 2 weeks. Maybe it's like older English, but it is a very, very common phrase here in Australia. And now I'm thinking like, if Americans really hadn't heard that term and didn't know about it, if this is in fact a nod to British culture. So the only real connection I could think of for this one is when Taylor performed Invisible String for the first 2 weeks of the Eras tour and then changed it to the one, which obviously was a very interesting and clear message to send, I guess. And this was before the breakup news. So like looking back in hindsight, a pretty deliberate decision to make. It's also really interesting to have a feature on our opening track. This is the first time Taylor has ever done that. Typically the opening track really sets the tone for the entire album. You know, Fearless, State of Grace, Ready for It, Mine, The One. I love all of these songs. I'm a big track 1 girly, so I'm super intrigued by this choice. I also wonder if, like Lavender Haze, hearing this song will be the first time we find out the genre of the album. If you guys saw my Midnight's reaction video, I was just so stunned and thankful, I guess, when we heard Lavender Haze, and it dawned on me that it's a pop album. So going into this album, hearing Fortnite could be our Lavender Haze moment. It's definitely out of character for Taylor to let someone else be there and like share that spotlight on the opening song, but I'm absolutely here for it. I will note, side A, as in like the first 4 songs, are kind of the songs I have the least amount of notes for, because side B, C, and D, I have a lot to say. We'll get there. Next up is the Tortured Poets Department. For some reason, I was not expecting this to have a title track. I thought that that album name was kind of just the theme of the album. And so now, knowing that it's actually based on a song, it adds a whole new layer. I do hope this is a play on the Tortured Man Club, which I talked about in my previous video, but I'm wondering if that's a little bit too on the nose. So my prediction is actually going to be that it's a commentary or reflection on songwriters and artists. You know, they are of course seen as tortured poets. People love to say that artists make their best work when they are miserable. A lot of people hated the Love album for this reason, and then, you know, loved Folklore for the opposite reason. So I'm very intrigued to see if this relates to that in any way. And this is also where I'm most intrigued to find out who else worked on the album. If Taylor's the chairman, who else works for the department? Track 3, we have My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys. It's giving Pretty Little Liars, the Dollhouse episodes, which Oh my god, award-winning television. I had to check this so many times to see if she had used the British or American spelling of favorite, because I was like, that sends a message. If it has a U in there, it says a lot. But as far as I can see, it does not. So the phrase, my boy only breaks his favorite toys, kind of made me think about how we are the most hurtful to the people we love the most, which obviously we shouldn't be, but I think like by nature, it's the people we feel safest to be our most vulnerable and like sometimes ugly selves around, because we feel like we can bounce back from it and they're more likely to forgive us compared to, you know, complete strangers who we tend to put on more of a show for. So I wonder if this refers to that kind of notion of breaking your favorite toys, being harshest to the things or people you love most. It also obviously made me think of bad, bad boy, shiny toy with a price. You know that I bought it. Do I really understand that lyric? No, but it's provocative.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
Was Taylor his favorite toy? Is that who is being broken? Or is this simply a song about Benjamin? Benjamin the cat breaking his favorite toys. I think the key word here is only. It's not my boy breaks his favorite toys. It's that he only breaks his favorite toys. He doesn't break the other toys, only his favorite. Interesting. God, I'm so excited to hear this. Next we have number 4, Down Bad. This is such an interesting like turn of events. You guys know I talked about this in my breakdown of Midnights. Paris, I think it was, that just didn't feel like it fit with the song to me. What was it about? Shade, and not the kind that's thrown, but the kind where a tree has grown. And I've also kind of felt that way about With No One Around to Tweet It. It's just a like cultural phrase or reference that really pulls you out of that otherwise timeless song. And so like down bad is to mean like really in love with someone that, you know, likely doesn't love you back. You have really strong feelings for someone. You are down bad for them. I'm just wondering how that will age, because it reminds me of when movies and TV shows use social media as part of their storytelling, and they have like the bubble on the screen or like talk about going viral. Like it just really pulls me out of the moment and thinking about how it will age 10, 20 years from now. Anyway, I shouldn't shit on a song that I haven't heard. And knowing Taylor Swift, I think this song will actually really surprise me and not be such a face value representation of what that means. So I think Down Bad will have a little twist to it. If we are going on face value, Down Bad could be about a short-lived situationship. Who knows? It could be about the beginning or earlier days of a long-term relationship. I'm thinking about that back cover of the album where it says, I love you, it's ruining my life. And that works as a complete cohesive sentence, right? I love you and it's ruining my life. But we can also examine it as 2 separate statements. I love you, it's ruining my life. I think we can get love songs and lost songs on the same album, kind of like what I was saying about Red. So Down Bad could be a more optimistic look at a love. I don't think so, but it could be. Now we are up to side B, and that opens with our track 5, So Long London. Again, this is one of those song titles where if I had seen the leak, I'm like, that's the dumbest, most obvious fake thing you could have written. No way would she ever write a song called that. But I have to remind myself, this is the woman who wrote Dear John and Style. I cannot believe we are about to be blessed with a new track 5. Our 11th track 5. If I'm being honest, I still can't believe we're getting TS11. It feels like yesterday I was theorizing with friends about if we would ever get TS7. Childhood me really made a great decision to become a fan of the most insanely productive human on planet Earth. So for any newer fans, track 5 is something that Taylor does where essentially it is the song with the most emotionally devastating lyrics. I'm not going to say the most emotional song because All You Had to Do Was Stay is a track 5, and because of the production, it doesn't feel like a sad song. But if you examine the lyrics, it is of course devastating. So you kind of always know that track 5 is going to be incredibly vulnerable and ruinous. It's going to ruin your life. So again, in my previous video, I talked about how the American Revolution began on this date that the album is coming out, April 19th. What I didn't yet know is that the British fired the first shot. So will this be Miss Americana saying goodbye to her London boy? I'm very intrigued to find out if there really is any truth to that connection. Realizing that like blew my mind, and obviously I'm not American, so I don't know that much about American history, but I've been having a lot of fun researching and like really digging into it. I have a lot of memories actually of like being at historical American sites as a kid, having presentations and learning about them. And even if this is the biggest reach of all time, I'm having a lot of fun. Anyway, that first firing that sort of signified that day was known as the shot heard round the world, which makes sense because culturally they believed it would have global consequences. And interestingly enough, I can think of something else that will be heard around the world this album. Now, if we put that whole theory aside for a moment and just address the title itself, I mean, let's be honest, we have not had a song name this bold and clear since the days of Dear John. Style, yes, but I think you could almost get away with that a little bit more. This is clear as day. Songs like Cold as You, White Horse, All Too Well, All You Had to Do Was Stay, Delicate, The Archer, My Tears Ricochet, Tolerate It, and You're on Your Own, Kid. Great titles, but from just hearing the title alone, I don't think we were able to get a clear picture of what it might be about. They gave some hints at a theme, but this leaves no mystery as to what she will be addressing here. I think it's pretty clear to all of us that for many, many years, London became Taylor's home, and more importantly, a person became Taylor's home. She had the bravery to leave that home, to leave the warmest bed she's ever known, and I think this song will be that goodbye note. She said, "You're not my homeland anymore." On Lover, we had Cornelia Street, and that was hypothetical. That was, this is how I would feel, how it would ruin my life if we ever were to part ways, how impossible it would be to exist in a place that reminded you so strongly of that person. Now, it's not hypothetical anymore. Okay, track 6 is But Daddy, I Love Him. When we first got the track list, this was the one that my eyes went to, and I think internally I just screamed because never did I think we would get a song called this from Taylor, but you know, it feels like just yesterday we were hearing about vigilante shit or karma. So we need to keep in mind what often comes after track 5, you know, the deep, vulnerable, crying our eyes out song, is the emotional whiplash of a track 6. From All Too Well into 22, The Archer into I Think He Knows. So I think here we can really prepare ourselves to be picked up off the ground by Taylor and like shaken around a bit in a fun way. She's like, it's all good, let's have a dance. The name doesn't give me that at all, but the fact that it's a track 6, I'm like, this is where we recover for a while. So obviously, But Daddy, I Love Him is a famous quote or reference. It is from The Little Mermaid.
Daddy, I love him!
Ariel talking to her dad about how much she loves Prince Eric and wanting to be with him, fighting her dad for this approval essentially. And the rainbow lights are back, yay! So the interesting thing about this obviously is that the story of Ariel and the Little Mermaid is that she gave up her voice to be with the love of her life.
Thank you for hearing me.
You shouldn't have had to give up your voice to be heard.
Just sit with that for a little minute. Taylor is no stranger to wanting to be with someone her father or family doesn't approve of. Look at one of her biggest songs of all time, Love Story. I talked about this in my video 2 weeks ago about Taylor's unreleased songs, but this is a theme scattered throughout her career, beginning, you know, in songs like $10 and a Six Pack, even Love Story or Ours. It's that same kind of sentiment of it's you and me against the world. I don't care what anyone says. I just want to be with you. And now if you were to guess once again what year The Little Mermaid came out, yes, that's right. Once again, 1989. So not only does Ariel give up her voice in this, but she is 16 when that happens. How old was Taylor when the world first heard her voice in her debut album? 16. I think a lot of this stuff is not planned, and the universe just arranges itself in a way for Taylor Swift that we have never seen before and will likely never witness again. And I'm so happy to be here for that. The other fun little piece of that puzzle is that Taylor dressed as Ariel for a New Year's Eve party a few years back where the theme was your childhood heroes. The invisible string is woven beautifully throughout time on this one. Of course, this phrase kind of became popular. It was seen on like t-shirts and merch and was tweeted. It became like a cultural thing. And as I'm sure many of you know, Harry Styles himself also wore a t-shirt that said this. I don't think we should be reading too much into that, as I've seen people doing on Twitter. It is a common, popular kind of phrase. Harry did not come up with this. As much as I would love for the 2020s king and queen of pop to be reunited once again, I do not think this has anything to do with Harry, but more on him later in this video. Next we have track 7, Fresh Out the Slammer. So I've seen a lot of people saying this will be something similar to vigilante shit, which honestly makes sense. The title has a reference to jail. Why would we not assume that? You know, it's about exposing someone's crimes, or maybe even similar to Getaway Car, kind of being the criminal herself. Also, yeah, if you didn't know, the slammer is jail.
Did you send him to the slammer?
Is that about like the slamming of the door? The slam and screen door? Is that where that word comes from? I can definitely hear it in a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie.
And that's how we need to get Jordan out of the slammer.
Personally, I have a slightly different take on this. I'm wondering if Taylor is referencing her time in a relationship, you know, whether that be when they were in lockdown or just being with this person, as jail. In her Time magazine Person of the Year interview, she said, "Me locking myself away in my house for a lot of years, I'll never get that time back." We know she didn't want to be in the basement. She wants the penthouse, which thankfully she got. And we know this thanks to the Bejeweled music video. But I think this might be like a feel-good bop, kind of like Bejeweled, about like feeling yourself and like coming out of a dark darker, sad time or period in your life and being like, okay, I have this new lease on life. It's like I've just escaped from jail and I'm gonna go and really take advantage of everything that I can and appreciate life. Timeline wise, I don't think this album will catch up at all to like the Travis Kelce of it all, but it is interesting to see how since that previous chapter of her life ending, it's kind of been like a 180 into, you know, embracing being out and about more. And whether the general public likes that or not, it's really nice to see her living life. She was locked up, now she's not. Good for her. We obviously also need to think about he could be my jailer, Burton to this Taylor.
And he can be my jailer, Burton to this Taylor.
He was literally her jailer. Like, he kept her imprisoned. But we also have It Was the Great Escape, the Prison Break from Getaway Car.
Great escape, the prison break.
Taylor is no stranger to relating love and relationships to jail, and I can't wait to see this new take on it. I truly hope this light does not annoy you guys. It's a little bit annoying to me, but I want to keep talking about this, so I apologize. Okay, track 8 is called Florida, and not just Florida, but Florida, 3 exclamation points.
Exclamation point!
Featuring Florence and the Machine. Now, can you imagine how fun that would have been to have that revealed to us in like a Midnight's Mayhem with Me scenario? I'm just so annoyed that it leaked. I can't imagine what a bummer that must be for artists. To work so hard on something and have someone spoil it for what? TikTok views? Oh, we really need to go back to a time without internet. And I say that as someone who would lose their job instantly, but God, some people just ruin it for everyone else. So Florida to me is kind of like the precursor to Fresh Out the Slammer. You don't really expect to hear Florida, the state, referenced in a song. So to me, it can only reference one thing, which is that the show that Taylor played in Tampa, Florida was the first one after the breakup announcement, and how hard that must have been for her. The 3 exclamation points are very interesting. It's not just Florida, like it's being shouted or exclaimed, and I love a bit of fun punctuation in a song title, so very interesting. It does honestly make a lot of sense that she would want to tell us that side of this story, what she went through, her side of things, what that was like, you know, being on the road during this massive heartbreak. Oh my gosh, it's so interesting. I'm now thinking back to, I don't know if it was my predictions video last year. One of you will have to remind me if you remember, but I said Taylor writes her best music when she is touring the previous album, when she's on the road, you know, going from city to city, late nights, alone, after a show, you're brimming with emotion and energy. Was I right or was I right? So the fact that she has let us know, you know, that she was working on a lot of this album, writing a lot of these songs whilst on tour is so interesting, because not only was she on tour as she's done so many times in the past, but this tour is directly a tribute to her career and a walk down memory lane. And how would that not bring up such interesting emotions? We kind of already did that with the whole Midnights thing, but I'm just intrigued to see what else singing her life's work each night and reliving the memories and the moments that created her career, how that will manifest in new songs. Timeline wise, again, it also makes sense that she would want us to hear this before we hear Reputation Taylor's version. I mean, that album is essentially a Joe Alwyn love dedication. So the same way she deliberately released You're Losing Me and like wanted us to hear that at that specific moment, I think it's pretty important. And Florence, who saw that coming? I know I didn't. I'm so excited by this. Florence, I feel somewhat like Adele, can like emotionally pinpoint you in her songs, whether happy or sad is just so good at like evoking feelings from you. So I can't wait to see what that is. And now that I think about it, Florence was seen leaving Electric Lady Studios. If Taylor had been releasing this track list and revealing the features one at a time, we would have been going nuts with our guesses and predictions now. We'd be thinking Sabrina because of this Instagram post with that caption, everyone that was at that black and white themed listening party last year. Oh boy. So next we have side C, and that opens with track 9, Guilty as Sin, ? Not just guilty as sin, but we're questioning. But if there is one thing about me, I love a Taylor Swift song with a question mark. So I can guarantee this will be a good one. We have question, we have Is It Over Now? And best of all, we have kind of I Heart ? This is joining the ranks with some great songs. The Punctuation Gang is getting a new member. Also, here we have 2 in a row. We have Guilty as Sin and then Who's Afraid of Lil Ol Me, which we'll get to. But that's so intriguing to have 2 questions, one after the other. Guilty as Sin, again, is such an interesting concept, and I just talked about this in my video on her unreleased songs, where she sings love like a sinner, lose like a winner. As concepts, guilt and sin automatically make me think of would've, could've, should've, and the crisis of faith and like religious breakdown that resulted in. I don't think I would be so lucky as to get another song about that concept and relationship, but it's definitely where my mind went. It also made me think of the overlooked song, including by myself, Carolina. They've said that I was guilty as sin and sleep in a liar's bed. Guilty as sin. I was talking to someone on Twitter about this, but the punctuation and capitalization of letters on this is different to her previous albums, I think. Guilty as sin, the small letter isn't capitalized. Same with Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. Whereas when we compare it to these songs, every word has the capitalized first letter. I'm confused. Once again, like vigilante shit, this could very well be referencing the Scooter Braun, the Scott Borchetta of it all, guilty as sin. I do hope that it is something a little bit, I guess, less on the nose. Again, more like treacherous or would've, could've, should've, the way that someone can make you feel. Keen to hear your thoughts on that one. So then 10, as we mentioned, is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. My instinct is that this has to be a reference to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which funnily enough stars Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, aka I haven't read or seen that, so I don't really have much to comment. Fans watching this, please let me know in the comments a bit more about what that play and film were about. But my guess would be that this is sort of the anti-hero of our album, a self-aware and like self-reflective moment on how the world perceives her and how she perceives herself. Almost hints of You're on Your Own, Kid, or Mirrorball, and just like examining who you are and how you fit into this space, especially as the most famous person in the world, and what that must be like trying to make genuine connections with people. Again, one of the songs I'm most excited to hear. Then track 11 is I Can Fix Him, in brackets, no really, I can. Me watching Gilmore Girls and being Team Jess. This kind of struck me with how it contrasts to, is it insensitive for me to say, get your shit together so I can love you? In that one, she was waiting for someone else to get up and, what do the Americans say? Pull yourself up by their bootstraps. You know, she was wanting him to figure his shit out so that they could really be together. Whereas now she's saying, no, I've got this. I can fix him. I'll make him a better person. And the parentheses is what really gets me, because it could go two ways. Either that no really I can is like making fun of herself, because you know how that sounds when you hear a friend say that. I can fix him. I can change him. No, you can't. She's like getting ahead of that response. She's doubling down because she knows her loved ones and anyone with a vested interest is judging that. But what if she's right? What if she's like, no, really, I can fix him? I don't see a world in which that's possible. I don't think you can't fix a man. You can't fix anyone if they don't want to do it themselves. So I wonder what this will reveal. Now, track 12 is LOML. So we can kind of assume that this refers to Love of My Life, but it is interesting to note that the song that is listed as an acronym, as we so often do with Taylor songs, is all lowercase. Typically, you know, when we refer to songs as just the letters of the words, it's all uppercase. So I'm wondering if she's done this stylistically because that is how Gen Z writes it, you know, all lowercase, or is it a way of somewhat diminishing such a grand statement? The same way that saying illy or love you holds less weight than saying I love you to a person, is putting this in all lowercase reducing how much she means it. I think personally it's because it won't be what we expect, and for her to use those acronyms, it would have just looked weird. As all capitals, it has to be lowercase. But my more unhinged theory is that Taylor will change the meaning or the usage of that acronym throughout the song. You guys know I love when Taylor like has a line that is repeated but slightly changes as the story progresses, especially when it's the opening and closing lines of a song. So imagine if she uses this acronym and Love of My Life in the first verse, but by the second verse or by the end, it's Loss of My Life or Lies. Like, this could go anywhere. And let's also not forget that Taylor performed I Don't Want to Live Forever in, I think it was June of last year on the Eras tour, which was very unexpected. And in that she sings, wondering if I dodged a bullet or just lost the love of my life. Wondering if I dodged a bullet or just lost the love of my life. This is not our first mention of that term. Also, just as a fun side note, this is like the third or fourth time she and Harry have had a song of the same name. We obviously have Daylight, Carolina, and then I'm gonna include Baby Honey and Honey Baby because it's essentially the same. And now Love of My Life. So if we learned anything from Harry, it's that we can expect the unexpected, because his Love of My Life was not what we thought it would be. It wasn't about a person at all, but in fact about a place, the city he calls home. So it'll be interesting to see if Taylor does something similar. Okay, let's fix this lighting real quick. So our fourth and final side, side D. This begins with track 13, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. The fact that this is track 13 feels very important to me. Obviously it has I in the title, but I think this will be very personal to Taylor herself. And I guess that's kind of the point of an album. If we didn't have these as imagery for the album and this song was on like a 1989, I would assume with this kind of title, it would be like a New Romantics, like a pop Max Martin dance hit, being like, I can do it with a broken heart. I can go out, have a great time, still be me and live my life. However, the visuals we have been getting makes me think it's less likely. I do think thematically this will be about, you know, touring, life, moving on, and most importantly, creating art. She can do all of those things with a broken heart. The name actually kind of reminded me of a moment in in Rent when Mark's complaining about the Tango Maureen, and Joanne's like, you should try it in heels. That old adage of like, anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can do backwards and in heels. Taylor could be saying here, anything you can do, I can do it with a broken heart. So that makes me wonder, is she saying this to build herself back up? Is she saying it to empower herself? Is she talking herself into it? Or is this a bejeweled karma moment where she's celebrating that she can do this? Like I said, likely half or at least a lot of this album was written whilst touring, so it could really go either way. Track 14, we have The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. I am choosing to believe that this song cannot possibly be as chaotic as that title suggests, but anything is possible. You know, could we really live in a world where we go from your integrity makes me seem small to the smallest man who ever lived? Maybe. Gotta love that from the loudest woman this town has ever seen. I mean, again, I can doubt it all I want, but the album's release date is that exact date when all of Taylor's closest friends unfollowed Joe on Instagram. So we could be in for a messy, chaotic song. I don't know, there's just something telling me that it won't be that on the nose. I'll be happy if it is, but I don't think it will be. Again, maybe this is a song about little tiny Benjamin Button. Track 15 is The Alchemy. Reading that for the first time, I was kind of confused. I would have thought it would be either Alchemy or The Alchemist, but again, I'm just thinking of like the book. So alchemy as a practice is like the study of or attempt to make varied metals into gold, which is very interesting when we think about the amount of times that Taylor has referred to that person or that relationship as gold. You know, your Midas touch on my Chevy door, everything you touch turns to gold. Or I once believed love would be burning red, but it's golden like daylight.
Made your mark on me, a golden tattoo. My love had been frozen, deep blue, but you painted me golden. It's like your eyes are liquid, it's like your body's gold.
Surely has to be about attempting to make something, a relationship perhaps, into something greater than what it was. Carnations you had thought were roses, that's us. Maybe she was simply trying to trick herself or attempt to believe that something was more valuable than it was, better than it was. If I'm not mistaken, which I could be because I'm simply a nostalgic little bitch making silly little YouTube videos, not an alchemist, but from my limited knowledge, alchemy cannot actually transform matter into gold. It's masquerading as gold, but within it there's still like that lesser value underneath, right? So maybe she's kind of coming to terms with that. Maybe this is the science of falling in love and holding on to those great moments, because you know, when things get hard in a relationship, I feel like as soon as it's good again, we forget about those little tough spots, and like, you know, maybe that we just focus on the gold and ignore kind of the less great stuff. So I wonder if this could be about that. You know, is she reflecting on like the science of falling in love and how we kind of force ourselves to stay there. Now track 16, the kind of closing track of the album, is Clara Bo, or Clara Bo. I just don't have an American accent, obviously. This is definitely, and like take a shot every time I say this, but the song I'm most excited to hear. Clara Bo was a silent film star in the 1920s, and the term it girl was coined for her, which is insane. In my previous two videos, I talked about Taylor dressing like an it girl and stepping into her it girl power, and then I said I hope we finally get an old Hollywood aesthetic from her. And then the album closer is named after like the biggest girl in Hollywood from the golden era, who the term it girl was named for. Oh my god. So Clara starred in a film called It, so she was known as the it girl, which then became synonymous with like icon essentially. She was considered Hollywood's first real sex symbol, and you know, was the subject of gossip and rumors, much like our girlies Rebecca Harkness and Taylor Swift, and the unknown subject of The Lucky One. So seeing as The Last Great American Dynasty and The Lucky One are songs that I adore so much, I know I'm gonna love this song. The concept of fame, how utterly lonely and terrifying and challenging it can be. I know a lot of people look at celebrities and all they see is privilege, which is honestly fair. There is a lot of that there obviously, but I also think being famous would be awful like a lot of the time, and like very terrifying and also lonely. I don't think I need to tell you guys like the examples of celebrities that have struggled with substance abuse, addiction, suicidal thoughts, all of these things because of how hard it would be to live the life that they live. And I get it, a lot of people don't want to have sympathy for people in the limelight. It's just like, I would never choose that life for myself because of how you just can't live like a normal person in so many ways. And so I guess I just like the duality of it and find it interesting to hear a different perspective or the other side of the story. Just look at Britney Spears with Lucky. Clara Bo experienced this. Taylor obviously experiences this, and so it will be very interesting to see her connection there. Now, insanely, Clara Bo's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame is located at Sunset and Vine.
Whiskey on ice, sunset and vine.
I know I've talked in videos before about how funny it is that like on the intersection of Sunset and Vine, it's really just banks, but come to find out, Clara B has been there all along. And as I mentioned, Clara was a silent film star before later transitioning into what we call the talkies, aka like films with dialogue. And again, much like Ariel, it is very interesting that it's someone that artistically, you know, found her voice. After we got this track list, I definitely went and did a little bit of a mini deep dive, but now I'm quite intrigued to watch some of her more famous work. Obviously, there are so many similarities between Clara and like Taylor's lived experience, but I also just thought these two photos were crazy, like the stars under the eyes. I can't wait to hear this one. Now, finally, we have a bonus track, the Manuscript. This is maybe the title that gives the least away. So a manuscript is of course a book, document, or piece of music. I think it can also refer to a film manuscript, typically handwritten rather than typed, but it just fits in so well with the entire theme of this album, the Tortured Poets Department and their manuscript. But what it made me think of is once again Taylor's Person of the Year Time magazine interview, where she talked about kind of not constructing the narrative of her life, but being somewhat in control of it. And maybe that refers to the manuscript of her life, whether it's how it's gone, how she wants it to go, or how she wished it had turned out. So thematically, I could see it being similar to Mastermind, you know, planning it out. But again, I'm just very excited because I love a bonus track, especially when we look at something like Hits Different, like artifacts and evidence.
I find the artifacts cried over a hat. I trace the evidence, make some sense.
This feels like it might be my song. Hits Different and You're Losing Me, both kind of bonus tracks, both breakup songs, both some of the best songs on Midnights. So Manuscript, I'm very excited for. I'm so glad our rainbow lights are back. One final thing before I go, I feel like I need to, yes, I personally need to address this. I weirdly had a lot of people asking me, where does this fit in the Lover House? And I think we need to acknowledge that the Lover House was burned down. Even though that looks nothing like the Lover House, it is what it represented. So I think this really does represent a completely new era. But more importantly, if we think about who burned it down, like the version of Taylor on the Eras tour that did the burning, she looked like this. A side fringe, kind of sexy little getup. So I'm wondering if that's an indication of what the Poets era will look like. You know, we've been seeing those side bangs lately. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little tiny braid in that hair. I mean, along with the fact that all of the other eras are currently gone from her website, this feels like something totally new. This is not connected to the Lover House at all. If anything, Taylor made this new album out of the ashes after it was burnt down. So if that's not exciting, I don't know what is, because this feels like it has the potential to be a folklore, something completely new, a breath of fresh air, and just a new side of Taylor that we haven't seen before. Essentially, April 19 cannot come soon enough. Well guys, that is my thoughts on every track for this upcoming Poets album. Please let me know yours in the comments. I'm just so excited to keep talking about and discovering new things about this album. If you like this video, please give it a like. That helps me so much. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Surfshark down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!
Is this what it feels like?